You're listening to the We Are Libertarians podcast network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com.
Are you a diehard comic book collector?
Or maybe a lapsed fan?
Maybe even someone who has never picked up a comic book in their life. Hi, I'm Remso Martinez.
And I'm Mark Claire. Every single Wednesday at the Second Print Comics podcast, Remso and I take a deep dive into the storylines, character arcs, moments, and events that made us the fans we are today.
Tune in every Wednesday for new episodes available on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and wherever else podcasts are available.
Check out more from the Second Print Comics podcast at secondprintcomics.com.
Prepare yourself. You're on the run with Remso W. Martinez.
Welcome back. I know what you're thinking. This is the worst non-political show on an openly political network. But at least, unlike some of my co-hosts, I don't get a strikes on YouTube for simply putting out content. Hi, welcome once again to On the Run. I'm Remso W. Martinez. It's been an interesting week, month, year. Everyone wants to go ahead and talk about everything else is doing with everyone else and all their things. And while it's a crazy world of lots of stuff going on, I care less about what's going on in Washington and what's going on in your head. Simple, careless, sometimes complicated conversations that lead us down a comedic twist, reminding us that at the end of the day, we don't have the answers to anything, so we might as well have fun and talk about it. Speaking of which, all of you basically help make the show happen. You let me know what you like, what you don't like, and then you go around making fun of my facial hair on Twitter. Not that it hurts my feelings much, but what that is to lead to is basically me saying that I've been drinking before recording this, so things are going to get odd, which is why I went ahead and brought on two amazing guests to cover today's topic: what women think men think about women. A literal topic headliner that one of you submitted to me, which you could submit throughout all of social media. And I saw this and I said, what women think men think about women? Or is it what women think men think about women thinking about men? And then it got complicated, and that's when the drinking began. But you're not going to hear me talk about this today. I'm going to go ahead and throw out your questions you sent to me on Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram at HeyRemso, HeyRamso, and I will go ahead and read it. But we've got two beautiful women here tonight that are going to go ahead and give you their thoughts. You know her from a few episodes past, describing why you should be nicer to women on Twitter, Myah Master. Myah, great to have you back on.
Thank you for having me. I'm here to get into it.
Yeah. According to several listeners, you're one of the reasons why their boyfriend slapped them and why they're not allowed to just randomly go scrolling through their Twitter feed anymore. So there's that.
Man. I'll take that as a compliment.
I love it.
There you go. And there you have it. Everyone's favorite gun-toting redhead from the most blue state I can imagine, Washington State, Kerry Slone, shotguns and stilettos across Al Gore's amazing internet. Kerry, how is life?
It's great. You can tell he's been drinking because it's stilettos and shotguns. And
shotguns. Yeah, it's the thing.
So you can
it's
tell
the thing, man. It's the
he can't
thing.
even read his own.
It's the thing. The thing.
So this is. See, men don't listen. Like that's the first thing we think, right? Read.
And this is how it started.
Oh yeah.
While she ranted, I'm just thinking, I potentially saved a life tonight. I got two women off the road for at least an hour. Am I a hero? Yes, but we won't get into that.
It's true. It's true, except that I haven't left the house in 2 days, so I don't know if you really did it or.
So ladies, I am so very happy to have both of you here tonight. You're brought back by fan demand because you tell it like it is and you get people thinking. And if I've known one thing over many years, it's that as I've come into adulthood, as I've been in a long-term relationship, as I've gained more platonic female friends, the one thing I can definitely tell myself if I were to go back in time and meet 12-year-old Remso is that you're not going to understand a lot of shit going on in the mind of a woman. And if you try and figure it out, you're going to get yourself in a lot of fucking problems. So you two being two of my favorites, what I wanted to do was I wanted to go ahead and throw some questions to you, along with questions from listeners, because I don't, men will talk amongst each other. If you didn't know that, we will talk amongst each other. We get on the same all men's Zoom call that you're not allowed on. And we try and talk and we try and figure things out. But usually
we talk about our Tupperware meet, right? Our Tupperware parties.
Oh yeah. What's it called? Pampered Chef meeting.
Yeah, well, whatever. The military, the husbands are deployed and all the women go to the meetings or their parties.
Everyone's in an MLM.
Yeah, but now we really know that it's the men doing that.
Absolutely. So we talk and we try and figure out what's going on. But I thought it would be better if we just blatantly asked you. And I am basically the Jesus on behalf of the entire male race, putting myself out here, asking the questions on their behalf.
Are you just starting on your Jesus beard? Is that
okay, which brings me to my first question, which is purely selfish. I was recently discharged from the National Guard, which means I am trying out a new hairstyle and new facial hair. I always wanted facial hair, and I've been putting out polls and everything else, and this is purely a me question. This entire episode is basically just because I wanted to ask this. You're both extremely stylish, beautiful women. I know you're my friends, and you're going to give me the honest truth because you care about my feelings.
He is kissing our asses.
I am growing out the Van Dyke, which is the thicker mustache and a goatee soul patch because I think it squares out my face and looks classy as fuck. Question. I'll start with Kerry and then Myah. Should I shave or should I grow?
Gosh, I don't know. I'm not completely, as I'm looking at this, I'm not completely convinced that this is a good look for you. Honestly.
Okay.
Now that being said, to be fair, I would like to see you in full beard, right? I need to
like all around or just have it get long?
Just nice and clean. Like maybe an Abe. I don't know. I mean, I've got it, the Abe, right?
The chin strap, I think.
Yeah. So
Kerry, I'm Puerto Rican. We don't grow that.
Well, that was going to be my next thing is that right now you just right now, I love you. I say this all of my heart, but you look like one of the Latino boys from junior high when I was in Southern California that's trying to grow.
That's pretty accurate.
Like
I was recently asked if I hit puberty.
It's kind of what it's looking like a little bit.
I err on the side of facial hair always. I mean, like what women think about men is that at least most women I know love facial hair. And having known you as long as I have, the facial hair ages you in a good way, in a maturity way, versus baby face. I think it makes you, you're taken more seriously. But I'm not a big fan of non-connecting facial hair. So I would say, if anything, at least grow a full goatee. I would say,
I'm trying. This took a couple of weeks.
Or just a mustache, because mustaches are in right now.
I'm not a porn star, please.
You would, I would say you look like a porn star, but I think that Myah articulated that much better and like the connect. I think she put into words what I was saying is that just the disconnect. It makes it look like you're, and especially because you do have such a young.
I've got a rounder face too, and I think my chin sometimes hides in that. So I wanted something that I could shape.
Is this what you're saying? Is this your version of a contour?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is your version of an Instagram contour.
What makes it like puberty, right? Because like when guys are going through puberty, they can't. It's like patchy. But if you connect the facial hair, it's like, no, I'm a grown man. I'm like consciously making the decision to have a goatee right now.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. Like you can't see it here, but like this part is all hair. It's all blonde, which makes it awkward. So you can't see it on camera, but if you were here, you'd actually see it. Like there is hair.
Well, then maybe you should start dyeing your beard.
I thought about that, but I'm 26. Do people do that?
No one.
Do you know who Jason Knight is?
The name sounds.
Do you know Jason Knight, the master, the knife maker, the blacksmith?
Yeah. Okay. Now. I know.
His is blue, like a Smurf right now. Just saying, and he's almost 50. So if he can do it. You can do it.
Okay.
I'd also be curious to see this with longer, as this grows out a little bit more. It might take away the puberty.
I want to. So and I feel really awkward about this, and this is entirely going to become an episode about me getting fashion tips on my hair. But I like keeping my sides clean. Like I don't want to keep a high and tie anymore, but I like keeping my sides clean. I think I want to do kind of like an undercut and just have this grow longer and just like
keep
swipe
a long
it back.
top. Yeah. Not too long. Maybe a little. Does your hair curl a little bit?
Not really. It's very wavy.
Are you going to start wearing
a little wave?
Are you going to start wearing a flannel with one button and driving a lowrider too?
I'm not saying I am, but that may happen.
Well, You know, just go straight Viking with it. Like, just go long.
Full Viking. Braided.
So I'll say 50-50. I'll say 50-50. We'll let this continue, because the more people hate, the more I'm going to keep it. It's already gotten into the awkward phase. Maybe one day it'll reach manhood like the rest of me. But you know, ladies, one thing I like having long form conversations about this type of stuff is that I feel like in a world where everyone wants to overcomplicate simple questions, we avoid simple questions because they might have complicated answers. And for many shows with male hosts, this is not something that often comes from a serious way. Now, of course, I'm not a very serious man, but I think these are questions that we often ask ourselves, and we certainly ask each other. We just don't go straight to other women in our lives. So I'll go ahead and start with Myah for this one. Myah, what are things about women that you think men think that women think that are wrong, if that makes any sense?
Hold on.
I'm just going with the people tell me.
Say that one more time, a little bit slower.
I gotta breathe and I gotta do in and out. What are assumptions men make about women that are plain wrong?
Okay, assumptions men make about women that are wrong. One, I think that men assume women lack the ability to be detached to relationships or when it comes to sex. Women are perfectly capable of having, I don't really like to use the term meaningless sex because everything has a meaning. It just might not be as deep as you think it is. Yeah. But like, women are capable of this. Men think that because men think in order to have sex with a woman, you need to pretend like you're romantically interested. Then you end up with a woman who's romantically interested in you. You have meaningless sex. And she's like, what the hell? I thought this was something. And then men have this perception that women can't have detached sex. But it's like, no, if you were just upfront with that and said, hey, I want nothing, either she'd say, no, thank you, or she'd say, yes, same here. You know,
not to get into the deep end real fast, but would it surprise you if I told you that was the most number one submitted answer?
Yeah, probably. I'm not surprised. Not. Yeah. And I don't know. I'm trying to think of I mean, I think men think women all want. Okay, men think women are attracted to assholes, when in fact we're attracted to confidence. And oftentimes,
and assholes
show up in as confident, as to where nice guys lack that security and confidence, so they don't present that, so women aren't attracted to them. It's not that we don't want a nice guy, compassionate man. We want a man who knows that he's sure of himself. So the more that nice men become sure of themselves, the more that we'll be attracted to them. We don't like assholes. We end up attracted to confident men who pretend like they're nice guys up until the point when they drop the facade. And then we realize, oh my God, I ended up with another asshole again.
Well, let me tell you, this whole thing, all this action here on my face takes a lot of confidence. Clearly. Because I've only been called a poor man's Mario Lopez at least 3 times in the past 24 hours.
Oh my God.
It's poor man's Mario Lopez. Fatter Antonio Banderas. Broke man's Tony Stark.
Could be worse compliments than that. I mean,
hey, I'm just like, they're calling me Mario Lopez?
I know. And Antonio Banderas. Could be worse, right? It could be worse. You know, Maya's right about that with the, like, just be upfront with women, but like men, like, it's a whole game for them, right? That they think that they've got to play this instead of just being straight about it. And you know, if a woman is not saying that women can't be manipulative in that way, because they can, very much so. But honestly, I know many women, and when I was single, it was easy to be able to do, you know, it's like women aren't capable, or you can't have that friends with benefits kind of relationship. Not true at all. Absolutely not true at all. Just don't be a dick. Just be honest about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because usually, like, I think for a lot of people, we take a lot of our assumptions about questions we're not really comfortable actually asking people for movies. And it's always in films, like in these rom-coms where this woman has a one-night stand with a guy she met at the bar, and then he ghosts her and she's freaking out because, you know, he won't text back or he won't call her or anything else. But in reality, when I've seen it actually play out, it's the men who get upset about it, and it's the men that read up too into it. And these are the guys who the night prior were like, I'm just going to do whatever I want, bro. no responsibilities, no attachments. It's their fault, whatever happens. And then they're like, why isn't she calling me? I thought we had something. And it's like,
I think men think that they need to put on a certain facade for women in order to either get laid, or even people in general in relationships think that they need to be this person. And then they wonder why they cycle through so many relationships. It's like, if you would just be yourself from the get-go, you might not have as many relationships, you might not get laid as much, but when you do, it'll be with someone you're genuinely compatible with, and you won't have all this like heartbreak back and forth, questioning and answer, all that. Just be yourself and the right person will come along, whether it's platonic or romantic.
I'm going to be dating myself here because clearly I think it's safe to assume that I'm the oldest person in the room.
I never assumed that.
I should not assume that. And I do have a good Botox guy, so sometimes I can fool people. But I'm over 45. And I was born in that decade with really bad polyester. And the interesting thing, which is back in style, interestingly enough. But I bought
a denim jacket the other day. I look like Latino Bruce Springsteen.
I bet you do, especially with that wannabe Mario Lopez going on, right?
Exactly.
So there was a movie.
Somebody gets me.
There was an Eddie Murphy movie that came out in late 80s, early 90s called Boomerang. And it was actually about that. It was about him being a player and he couldn't find a woman because the most perfect woman didn't exist and blah, blah. Robin Givens was actually in it. And she played him and he got all butthurt. So it's actually a good movie before he went all weird off the rail. But so there's actually a full movie about that and how he starts chasing her because she ends up being the perfect woman. She's like, nah, I ain't got time for your shit.
It sounds like Hitch with Will Smith.
Literally.
I've never seen Hitch, but it's probably, that might be a more modern version of what the Boomerang was.
Yeah, he teaches the guy from King of Queens to be a player. And then when he actually wants to go out with this female accountant, she plays him.
Yeah, well, men don't understand. Like, men are shocked by a woman who doesn't need them. Like, I mean, it's revolutionary to their mind. And they always say when you start loving yourself and you stop looking for a relationship, that's when it finds you. But it's not some magical thing that happens. It's just the fact when you stop caring so much about a relationship, you actually focus on yourself, you're going to raise your standards and you're going to be more yourself. So the only people who can get even close to you are someone worthy of your time, but you're still not so focused on them. And as a woman, then a man is actually having to give effort to get your time and your attention. And now as a man, he's having to hunt, he's having to like give effort, and now it's different than what he's used to. And like, that's the chemistry that ends up happening. And it happens eventually, whether it's because you got tired of getting hurt or just because you raised your standards on your own. It happens at some point or another.
Can women identify the players?
Yeah.
Yes.
How?
Everything about the way they walk, the way they talk. If they're overly confident, like, I don't know, at a bar, just a guy being like incredibly direct and with that cocky tone of voice.
The very I call it the frat boy syndrome.
Yeah, definitely.
I call it frat boy
syndrome. And we
syndrome.
know we'll accept the drink. And sometimes women will pretend like we don't know you're a player because the women who just want to get laid will just get laid by the player because we don't care. And then he thinks he did something, but we're like, no, we knew the whole time.
We let you. Yeah.
We let you.
And the worst part is that the what's even worse about that is when they're in their 40s and 30s, 40s and 50s still acting like that.
Ooh.
That frat boy. It's just tacky. But Myah made a really good point about the strong, independent women. But what ironically that ends up attracting are more men, and it attracts very more. Without getting down a rabbit hole, because it could be its own kind of psychology. I used to teach some of this in a whole different lifestyle, whole different lane, but it's
when you were training pickup artists.
Kind of. No, not really. But it's the idea that dominant men are attracted to dominant women, and sometimes it's because they're looking for that equal. But more often than not, it's because we become the mission, right? For lack of a better term, right? We become, it's that classic animal instinct of that hunt, prey kind of thing, right? And what better to what better, for lack of a better term again, prize than this dominant dude saying that he was able to get this woman to.
Yes. Well, I've also dealt with narcissistic men who are like that, in that I realized that this past year after getting divorced and being single, and now I'm in a very happy relationship. But before that, I realized there's a lot of these like A-type dominant men who you think are your match because you think they're attracted to you for your dominant characteristics, that you're independent, but you're a challenge to them only in that they're so narcissistic. They want to be able to conquer a strong, independent woman and make them subservient, make them want to change things about themselves, make them want to like become more submissive in order to just be able to say that, like, for their own self-gratification, that they had that kind of power over a powerful woman. Find the most powerful woman you can find. See if you can lower her down, and then that just elevates you. And it was really disgusting to find out. And I don't think all men are like that, but I definitely, the stronger of a woman you are, the more likely you are to encounter these type of men.
You attract it.
Yes, you attract it. And then you think they're all great. You don't think they're an asshole. And all of a sudden, once you click and everything's going well and you think you found someone who loves you for all that you are, they start trying to subtly change things about you. Everything they said they liked about you, now they're trying to change the way you dress, how often you go out, the amount of friends you have, how your persona is, how you present yourself on social media, the way that how dedicated you are to your job. They loved how hard you worked, but now, why aren't you texting me back at work? Or why are you working so many hours? Why can't we spend more time together? Why can't you make me dinner at night, even though you have to work late? Like, it's little things here and there.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how domestic violence starts.
Exactly. And that's a big ass red flag.
Yeah, but that's exactly
I have a question real fast. Is the asshole and the narcissist the same person, or are they not mutually exclusive?
No, a narcissist is an asshole. An asshole is not a narcissist.
And I'll take an asshole. I talk about this a lot because I'm for those that don't know, I'm in the gun industry and community, whatever the hell that means.
We can't tell by your everything.
Could you tell? Well, this isn't everything. Come on. A lady never reveals all of her secrets now. Come on. Let's just say it's probably not the house you want to break into. But that being said, it's, that made me lose my train of thought now. See what you did to me? You got me off.
I'm so smooth.
So the asshole thing. So it's the goatee. It's the detached goatee. So, we talk about, the whole, one of the big conversations of the past year is the big redacted, as we like to refer to it, which I somehow inadvertently ended up on Fox News as the mother of, which was weird. But because I've learned very quickly how the media likes to reuse images. I'm blaming you, Remso, you media people. But
get in line.
I tell people all day long, a very good friend of mine, very close male friend, is a lot of people think he's an asshole. He's really not. But I will take if the shit goes down or anything comes down to it and I have to pick, I'm picking an asshole. And I'm picking an asshole because they may be an asshole, but they're going to be honest. And I know that they're going to be there to ride or die, as opposed to somebody that's going to be wishy-washy and well, maybe, and what do you think? I want no. Fuck you, get in the car, let's get the fuck out of here, let's go. Yeah. And everybody's like, God, he's such a dick. Yes, but he's honest.
My best guy friend.
Or she.
My best guy friends are all very strong male types who are very blunt with women, not in a rude way, but to the point where it's like not as common. So women will identify it as asshole behavior because they're just so not used to it. They're used to men ghosting, coming up with fake reasons, or being more like the sensitive type of dragging it out as to where they're the types that are like, hey, it was a great time, but I'm not interested. You don't have what I have, what I'm interested in, and I'm going to go my own way. And you think, oh man, he's such an asshole because you're not used to that. But it's like, no, he's just being direct with you and not wasting your time. But some of my best guy friends are like that. And they're the people that I can count on the most. I know if anything goes down, they're going to give me their honest opinion. They're going to be there or they're not. If they tell you they're going to do something, they're going to do it. If they say they're not going to, they're not going to. Like it. I mean, they're definitely the people I want around. But I think that the asshole, whether or not someone thinks you're an asshole doesn't mean you are. And I think the true assholes of society are more the guys who do who lead you on, pretend Who
those are the
I wouldn't even
douchebags.
say try to sugarcoat
Are the
it. But
douchebags and the assholes the same, or are they different?
They're
They try
different.
to sugarcoat it because they're not actually confident men. They're afraid of conflict. So instead of being direct with you, they try to come up with some bullshit reason that everyone can see through and just makes you feel gaslighted.
So along the same lines, we have the first question I'm going to read off. I went ahead and randomized all of these, which looking back, I don't know why, because no one could actually see the order of these. So I just did all the extra work for nothing. This person went ahead and submitted, women think men don't care when they don't want to argue. It's really just restraint so that it ends before it escalates.
Yes, but that's still a form of not caring because you're more concerned with just not having an argument than actually having the discussion.
I was just going to say it's really about, I get that, men typically, it's funny because women are often categorized as being, particularly more conservative leaning women, I think, as somebody who's I like to think of myself as a real feminist, not this feminazi nut job shit that you see. Women more on that more conservative leaning side tend to be women that are perceived or are not wanting conflict, right? So they'll just be quiet and let the men, we just don't want to deal with it. But ironically, men typically I find are the ones that really don't want to deal with conflict, which I also find super ironic that we send them to war. I'm like, look, we could have ended a bunch of shit a long time ago if they just didn't.
Honestly,
especially if they were menopausal, like they just like done. Like this is really
men
we're
will
done.
start it, but women will end it. And
I would love to send Tucker Carlson to Iraq, but strangely enough, he went there. I said the story like 13 times because so don't worry about it. But basically, in 2004, Tucker Carlson wanted to be a wartime reporter when everyone wanted to be a wartime reporter, and I think he was stationed with the 1st Cavalry Division in Iraq, and he was supposed to be there for like 3-4 months. He lasted 2 days. Nobody likes to talk about it.
I'm really not surprised.
I'm not surprised either. Tucker Swanson Carlson from Georgetown didn't want to spend more than a couple days doing his job. What? He didn't even have to try and kill anyone. He just had to.
He got paid better than any E1 on the front lines.
It's amazing what happens when all you have available are some hua wipes and some baby powder, and you can't take a shower every day, and you're used to, and you came out of Georgetown. You know what I'm saying?
Look. This is my official announcement to Tucker Carlson. If you ever see this, I would like an exhibition match on UFC. You and me. I'll take the card.
I'd moderate that shit for free.
I guarantee a knockout within the 2nd round. I would say 1st round, but he probably will just cower in the corner and try to dodge all my punches. So I'll say 2nd round.
I will moderate that.
Tucker Carlson.
I will moderate that with so much enthusiasm. That'll be so fun. But going back to the question, though, women think men don't care when they don't want to argue. It's really just restraint so it ends. I kind of see where he's coming from, because here is my view as a man, and it's just my opinion. I think women are naturally more argumentative. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying men want to solve the problem on the spot, but women
want to talk about your feelings.
Yeah, and women also want to spot trends. Like, I don't want to know about why there's some piss on the toilet seat 2 years ago because right now it triggered it. I just want to go clean it off now, so that way you don't bring it up again.
But women are like, why do you bring it up? Why do
I keep bringing it up? That just tells me.
Why does everyone always assume it's the men's pee?
Or after that.
That sounded so much better in my head.
Okay.
The death stare of silence. Okay.
When men do
for
that,
the listeners out there, that was a silent. Both of us saying, "Are you effing kidding me right now?"
Yeah, literally. Okay, but the thing is men do that, and they honestly, I think a lot of the time, men do that in like coming from an earnest and kind place because they just want peace within their relationship. But that breeds resentment, like big time, because women might always have these receipts that pop up in your head, and as a man, you might not. But after a while, it will add up. And then it turns into, why am I always the one that's wrong? Why are you always right? Why am I always the one doing something bad and you're not? And I dealt with this in my marriage, but it's like, And I said, I understand why you feel that way, but that's not my fault, because you could have just brought it up. Like, we could have already had this conversation. It could have been a 30-minute to an hour conversation years ago where we hashed it out. We came to our conclusion, and now neither of us has resentment. We've grown our relationship. We've grown from it. But instead, 6 months, a year, 2 years later, you've been festering on this and letting it grow inside you to the point where there's a point of no return. You have this thing that's inside you for years now of this view of me that I'm always right and you're always wrong. And now it's made you feel insecure. It's made you feel less than in some way because of your own perception. It's emasculated you, and I can't undo it. But all this could have been undone if you had just told me what you felt in the moment you felt it, spent 30 minutes of your entire life telling me how you felt about it, hashed it out in a logical way, and then we wouldn't be here now. But men do this, and it grows that resentment, and then I think that just turns into whole other issues later.
Kerry, do you think that's a nature or nurture thing?
I think it can be both.
Because I think a lot of men are incapable of seeing it that way, not because they just don't know how, but because that is really kind of a foreign concept to a degree. Because I think men are taught, and I think it's more of a nurture thing, we're taught conflict resolution because that's what we have to be, because that is what we're supposed to be the best at. Okay.
I disagree. And so I think that you're taught conflict avoidance. So that you don't end up looking and being perceived as an asshole because you've lived in this decades long of patriarchal oppression. And so now, right, through time has come through all these women, right, like to try to silence men instead of being allowed to give them a voice rationally. That being said, there is something inherently wired in men to solve the problem. The issue is that men want to solve problem at hand. Like you said, just wipe the pee off the seat. What, instead of focusing on what the core of the problem is, which is that you keep fucking doing it, right? And right. So you want to, for men, it's one of these things where they want to solve the problem at hand, and they want it. My husband's very much this way. Like we butt heads about this all the time. He wants to solve it right then in that moment, right? But what'd you say?
He pees on the seat too.
No, God, no. That is.
He learned that a long time.
He's kind of fastidious about that kind of, like, he, being in the military, like he's like grooming and height, like he's really weird about all that kind of stuff.
Oh, I've got my
there's a joke. There's a joke. A soldier and a sailor walk into a bathroom, and the soldier stands next to the sailor because he sees him doing something odd. He sees him washing his hands, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And the sailor goes, "Well, in the Navy, they told us that after you use the restroom to wash your hands." And the soldier looks at him and says, "Oh, that's interesting. In the Army, they taught us not to pee on our hands."
You're right. But yeah. So, but the thing is that what pisses off women and what gets us frustrated is that we have to say the same thing to you over and over and over and over again for years, because you as men only focus on the one problem at hand, not realizing that the problem is based in a holistic issue that needs to be addressed. And that's what pisses us off, is that we're like, can't you see it? Like, the reason I keep bringing this up for years is because there's a core problem to this. And I'm not saying that it's like how you pee. I'm saying it's like, I've told you this once, and obviously you didn't fucking get it.
I don't care.
So would you say
just take some toilet paper and wipe it off.
Yeah.
So if it's nature, I think we deserve a little bit of grace on that. If it's nurture, I could see how what you mentioned earlier, conflict avoidance. I think that's actually a very accurate way of describing it, because I think for a lot of people, it's easier to fix the problem now than to address why the problem keeps happening.
That's exactly it. And I think that's just, I think in a lot of ways that's human nature in general. That's gender neutral, as one of the terms are. That being said, I think that men definitely have a proclivity to doing that, as opposed to women, where women, right? In fact, I'm actually writing an entire program right now for women with like firearms training and like how to train them differently, because we, like, contrary to what popular the Twitterati want to say, or the clitorati, as I like to refer to them, which is the feminazi, crazies out there. This
is going to be marked explicit, and I didn't even say fuck.
We do think differently, right? We do have inherent biological differences, and women are definitely more, solve the holistic issue. and we think differently, we process differently, as opposed to men that just want to, and it's been stereotyped as we just want to shut them up, right? I mean, that's like just, we don't want to fight, we just want to shut you up, right? I mean, there is that stereotype out there, but I don't think that's what it's rooted in, just wanting to shut us up. For them, it's just they obsess on focusing on that one. Like the problem to them is that they didn't pick up their shoes out of the middle of the floor. They don't see that the problem is that they've consistently done this for years. And it's kind of like there's sometimes every so often somebody will write, a meme that's actually effective, right? Or actually sends a real message. And one of them I read a couple years back that stuck with me was, why is it that everybody's always saying that moms lose their shit? And a mom finally responds. It was actually from a Twitter feed. And the mom says, because you didn't listen the first 50 times. Right? Mm-hmm. Like moms are nice. We're nice until we're not, because we've had to lose our shit. Now all of a sudden mom's crazy. Now all of a sudden mom has lost her shit. Now
I always said my ex was really good at apologizing and not good at changing the behavior.
Exactly.
And but to women and to men, he's just like, well, the first time it happened, I made a mistake. I did this thing. It got better. That's how I fixed the problem. Right. To women, it's like, you didn't listen to me the first, second, third, fourth, fifth time. 50th. So now I'm pissed. Now I'm exploding. And then it turns into, you get so mad about everything. Why are you so mad at me? You're so emotional. You're so over the top. And it's like, because you don't listen to me. I was so nice to you. I was so kind. I was so understanding and logical with you the last 16 times. And now you're still doing it. And he's just like, I don't understand. I just put my clothes not in the laundry hamper. I left the toilet seat up and you fell in at 4:00 in the morning.
Shit happens.
Shit happens, whatever. And it's like, no, I don't care about the thing at this point. I care about the fact that you didn't respect me enough to understand that I was upset in the past and that you should change the behavior to not continue upsetting me. And it's disrespectful to me for you to minimize my feelings to a moment of, I'm sorry, I'll do better, not doing better, and then telling me that I'm wrong for being upset that you weren't listening to me. Like, that's not cool. If something upsets me as my significant other, or even a person who cares about me, you should be saying, oh, I'm so sorry. I don't want to upset you. Let me not do that again. And that's how women see it. When you tell a woman you did something wrong, and not all women are good at this, but generally we think, okay, I did this thing. This is why I did this thing. How can I not do this thing again? Because it had this outcome. Men are just like, okay, bad thing happened. I'm going to fix bad thing. Next time bad thing happened, I'm going to do what I did to fix bad thing.
It's like men would rather put the duct tape or the duct tape or the WD-40 on the broken whatever instead of replacing the broken said thing, because it's going to break again at some point. And then all of a sudden they're pissed off because it broke again and they don't understand why.
And it's like, because you put a Band-Aid on it. You didn't actually fix it. What's the next question, Remso?
The next question, I actually think this leads right directly into it.
Remso's like, oh, shit.
No, I'm doing a lot of thinking. I'm looking back and I'm like, how many arguments could I have avoided if I did? Like, now I'm having an existential crisis. This whole thing was a bad idea.
I just texted my husband. I said, this would be really good for you to listen to.
Yes. Oh, I'm
actually, because he's not just hearing it from me.
I'm gonna become the accidental Dr. Phil by the end of the week. I'm so excited. And I didn't even try.
And I hope for women that listen to this, that like you've got two women here. So if like, you're like, oh my God. For me, I get those frustrations and like, I'm sure she did. Right. But now for Remso, man, you should probably have another dude at least to balance this out for you. Because now we're like, we get it. Right. Because now she's validating every issue that I've ever had and probably vice versa. And so when you have two of us coming at you, right, it's not the woman, right? It's obviously an issue if there's more than one of us saying this is a problem.
Well, like I said, I have the confidence.
Very vindicated. And all the men are realizing, hey, my girlfriend's not crazy. Maybe I should just look at things from a woman's perspective.
And Maya's right. If they are a mature man with a detached, a Dykes goatee, what was that called?
The Van Dyke, thank you. Worn by Pierce Brosnan and Christian Bale.
I'm bringing it back. I'm bringing it back. Sorry. if you have evolved emotionally to be to this point, then like with Remso, right? He's like, oh crap, like he's listening to this. So I hope that men can like listen and be like, oh, okay. So it's not just one woman. You
don't have to roll over your significant other. You could listen to this conversation, just go to them and be like, hey, I heard this thing today that made me think with a different perspective. I just want you to know that I hear you and I understand you, and I'm going to try to do better about the things that have upset you. That's it.
Don't get pissed when she's like, oh, I need to listen to that because oh my God, those girls are bad. I cannot believe that. Oh, because she will, right? Because finally she's validated, right? Finally she's feeling validated. And so I can be a little petty.
Pop off for a minute.
I can be a little bit petty. I'm going to own that. Okay, I can be a lot petty sometimes. If you follow me on Twitter, you know that. I'm petty as hell. Or I can be, I should say. So she might take a moment, right? She might take, let's just unpack that ego, set it to the side, let her have her moment. And just agree with her. And I promise you, your sex will be better if you do. Like, just do it.
And with that
everything
said.
Everything will be better, though. Everything will be better. There'll be less tension. There'll be less, vitriol, and just more understanding and compassion and, like,
less pee on the toilet seat.
Okay, there's nothing stronger and more confident in a man than a man who can admit when he's wrong.
Admit when he's wrong. It's sexy as fuck.
Behavior. That is the most, like, quote, alpha thing you can do, is to have security in yourself to say, hey, you know what? I was wrong about that. You were right. Let's move on. That's not a beta thing. That's not a pussy thing. That is a strong man who's like, I'm secure enough in myself. Admitting I'm wrong does not diminish me in any way. It makes me stronger.
And it's sexy. Women think it's sexy.
Women think it's so sexy. We do. And it has nothing to do with our power being elevated, but more so us recognizing power in you as an autonomous being for being a logical human being capable of change.
I think this next question is a great transition.
Myah and I need our own podcast with this.
I know.
Let's just run
on. Women think that men aren't as sensitive as women.
No.
Oh, I don't think so.
Oh, no, men are very sensitive. If anything, I won't say all men are more sensitive than women, but men can definitely be more sensitive in a lot of ways. It just depends on the topic.
I do think that culturally, my husband, when we got married, he his ex-wife was in this very how he ended up with me. I can definitely see why he went the complete opposite direction. Ultra conservative, right? Voted for Bush just because he was anti-abortion, had no concept of anything else, but he was pro-life, and that's all that mattered. That kind of extremism. And when we got together, he was gone. He's been gone most of our marriage, deployed, and so there's conflict, when he comes home and stuff. And I could see him get frustrated, and I don't remember how it came up because it's been years ago, but a conversation about crying. And he says, well, men, I don't cry. And my ex-wife used to tell me that I was a pussy if I cried. And I'm like, I don't ever want to hear that again. I don't ever want to hear that again.
In the relationships I've seen where it was the woman who was emotionally abusing the man. And this is actually a term that I think people think men say to each other, but I've heard it more often from women towards men, whether jokingly or serious, but it's man up.
Yeah. I hate that.
Like men will say toughen up. Toughen up and man up are two different things.
Two completely different. And I agree with you.
When I got back into the dating world after divorce, the number one thing that I looked out for, the first thing was a man who's able to process his feelings. And if I went on a date with a man or like dealt with men who were like, oh, I don't cry, or they couldn't express their feelings, I was like, I can't deal with that, because everyone has feelings. You not expressing them doesn't mean you don't have them. It means you don't process them, and they're going to come out, and I'm either going to be the target, or I'm going to have to pick up the pieces of someone who hasn't been able to process that. And I'm not your mom, and I'm not your therapist, and I'm over it. Like, I can't be that.
Carrie silently nods in the approval in the background. Yeah. It's for those watching on audio. Yeah. And that's exactly it. And to that, to expand upon that a little bit, and sometimes, my husband's a processor, right? And sometimes he'll respond right away, and sometimes he gets really quiet. If you're a processor, by all means, just look at her and say, I'm not sure how to respond to that.
What do you mean by processor?
Yes. You need
so, I may hit my husband with a bunch of da-da-da-da, and he sits there and he stares at me, and I'm like, so what was, I asked you a yes or no question. Well, I don't know how to answer that. Well, what the fuck do you mean? It's a yes or no question, right? I mean, this is kind of thing. Right?
Okay. I get
so if for whatever reason, you gentlemen, you don't have it, women are pretty quick processors. I'm really quick process. Like I have trouble in counseling because I'm usually quicker than I can usually figure out what's wrong with the counselor.
No woman can ever decide where to eat when given 20 options.
You want to bet pizza is always the answer. Tacos is always second. Solve the problem.
All you need to do is say, hey, I'm taking you to, I know exactly where we're going. I'm taking you to your favorite place. And you wait and you let her guess. And wherever she guessed, that's where you go. Okay, there you go. That's what you say.
That's right.
You all can thank me by leaving a 5-star rating and review after the show.
What do you mean? We've been together 15 years and you don't know my favorite place?
That's true. That's true.
Like, here's the deal. Find out what your woman's favorite food is and always default to that. Always. Yeah. Right. Mine's barbecue pulled pork. Make notes, gentlemen.
And if she says, if you offer that and she says no, if she's like, oh, I was actually thinking blah, blah, blah.
Now you have an answer.
Because if you say her favorite place, she'll be like, oh, that's so sweet, but I was actually more in the mood for blank. Then you go there.
Yeah, exactly. See, it works. But if you just look at them, look at her, like if you're in that moment, right, and she's hit you with something heavy or something, like you're obviously all of a sudden now having some revelation, about something, and you need a minute, just don't sit there silent and staring at her, right? Because the body language can be misinterpreted. I'm an empath, right? So I feel the energies coming off people very much, right? And those energies can come across defensive, which is going to make your woman defensive. And so just say, you know what? I'm going to need to think about that a minute to give you an answer, right? Right? Just communicate. Don't sit there and just stare at them, right? Process that information, tell them, men
I need a minute.
Right. And it's okay. Right. And ladies, for those of you listening, don't be give them the minute, but they need to let you know that they need the minute.
I've learned about my boyfriend, we haven't been dating a super long time, but I've learned about my boyfriend very recently. It finally clicked in my head. I mean, he is a processor, but he's a listener, which I love about him because I'm a talker, and he'll listen to me. And the thing is, he genuinely listens to everything I'm saying. But sometimes he fails to respond. And I'm so used to talking to a black hole of not being heard that I start to get defensive. I'm like, hello, did you hear me? And he's like,
are you listening?
Yeah, of course I did. I just heard everything you said. And he'll repeat it back. And I've started to realize it's like a two-pronged thing. He started realizing, let me verbally acknowledge I heard her. And I started realizing he is listening to me. He just doesn't always respond. He's genuinely listening.
So I get in trouble for that sometimes.
I hate that though.
So here's the thing though. My girlfriend will go ahead and want to talk about something that I am entirely disconnected from. It really does involve me. I don't know what the specific topic is
oh my God,
detail,
I've heard this so many times before.
She'll go ahead and do it, and I'll be listening, and then she'll end, and then she'll be like, do you want to respond? And I'm like, I have nothing to say. And then she'll ask me questions, and I'll be like, yeah, I repeat it, and I'll repeat it back. And then she'll be like, well, what do you think? And I'll say,
oh my God,
I don't really have a thought on it.
Okay. So
why isn't that a valid answer?
I quit the book because I thought that it honestly had a very non-feminist, just very antiquated, almost misogynistic tone. I don't care if I get canceled or uncanceled for that. But Steve Harvey's older book, Think Like a Man, Act Like a Lady bullshit, right? I started reading that because I had all these issues with dating, and my mom kept pushing on me to read it. And I was like, I shouldn't have listened to her. But I started reading it, and one of the things he talks about is women, you need to understand that when you're talking to your man about so-and-so at work and all the drama and the whatever, we'll listen to you, but we don't have an opinion because in our minds, we're thinking of the solution, and it's a stupid okay, well, why don't you just say blah, blah, blah? Or at the end of the day, a man can't relate to what you're saying. So his view is you just need to understand that there's things men don't care about. So talk to your girlfriends about it. Don't talk to your man about it. I don't agree with that. Your man's supposed to be your best friend. As a man, you don't actually have to care about it, but your care for your woman is what you should be focused on. You can actually change your perspective to where men's automatic thought process is, how do I fix something? Especially when a woman's talking about something you can't fix, like her feelings. Stop focusing on the actual things she's talking about and start listening to or perceiving her feelings about the thing that she's talking to you about. And if you're like, okay, I can't relate to anything she's talking about. I don't care that her friend bought the same dress as her for the bridal shower, and now they're wearing the same outfit. I don't care about that.
I love that shit because I usually look better.
Right? Because I always, who wore it better? I did. But it's like,
me, bitch.
I don't care about that. I can't relate to it. Okay. So as a man,
is this more common than I think?
Yeah,
it happened to me. I wore a dress to a wedding. Another lady.
Well, no. I'm talking. You know what I described, because I'll be honest. I've never brought this up to my other guys. I always thought it was just me.
You don't have to relate to that. You could just be like, all you have to say, this is magic. Wow, that really sucks. Or wow, that's really great. Whatever her feelings are, I understand where you're coming from. Reiterate how she's feeling.
Fundamental
I don't
human
have any
empathy.
experience with that. I don't understand where you're coming from, but I understand why you feel the way that you do. That's it. That's it. Women just want their feelings validated and to know that they're being listened to. That's it. That's it.
Empathy.
It's venting to you.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of men lack empathy, and I think that I don't think that's nature. I think that's nurture. I think that's the man up, right? I think that's the misconceptions of man up and stuff. But that, that's a conversation my husband and I have a lot. And where men are put into, especially if they're in very male, stereotypical male dominant roles, right? Where they have to have that more male dominant personality. And I think that it can cultivate that lack of empathy because they have to think more analytically. They have to be more, less emotional, right, about what they're thinking. And then it can create a pattern of detached feelings when they do need to have that. And I think, of course, that I'm sure Myah would have a lot to say about this.
I see that though, and like I agree with you.
Military guys coming home from war and stuff. I think that's a whole.
Sorry, guys, I ran off to the restroom.
But
yes,
it's like one of those things where I will agree with you. That's nurture. I also think that's something that we teach men, and men are taught, but we don't instinctively think that we're doing that. And I almost, I might be completely wrong about this. I almost think that's always been more of a survival thing. Like as civilizations come and go, you want the tougher men who are less emotionally attached to things, so that way they make quicker and more, quote unquote, objective decisions.
Like the assholes.
Well, look,
like the assholes.
You can have the opinion on whatever you want about the patriarchy, who perpetuates it, whether it's good or bad. But the fact of the matter is that it's all trickled down from a long period of time, and the issues with patriarchy now that men have, rightfully so, are perpetuated by men. I think that a lot of men have issues with actual things that branch from original patriarchy now, and rather than admitting the fault of the men who came before them, which you don't have to take responsibility for that, but men don't like to admit that, like no one likes to admit that men before me created the problem I'm having now. So then they'll turn on current culture and they're like, how are women creating this problem for me? Women aren't creating the issue. We're on the same side of you. We want you to be more sensitive. Most of us want you to address these issues. And those of us who don't garnered those opinions from the men in our life, or even the women in our life that came before us, who got those opinions from traditional patriarchy. And there's nothing wrong with having strong men and this whole family type, but acknowledging the fact that there are issues with that traditional sense of patriarchy that has trickled down into men not being socially accepted to talk about your feelings. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging, hey, that's a thing of the past. Let's change that. But men need to understand that it literally starts and ends with you. And women will follow. I don't want to say women will follow suit, because women are perfectly capable of our own thoughts and feelings. But a lot of women get our opinions on men based on the men in our life, especially our fathers, uncles, whoever the strong men are in our life, who have gotten that from so on and so forth. So it does start and end with men.
So is that like, does that
culture, you have to be the change. And then when you raise your daughters and your sons, you raise them to know it is manly to talk about your feelings. It's manly to be strong in how you feel. It's manly to ask for help. It's manly to admit your faults. Like, as we change that culture, it will trickle down. And then the women of tomorrow will expect that from their men. They'll expect the men that they're dating to talk about their feelings, to admit their faults, to be open with what they want, and so on and so forth. But so many people will stop at, well, the women I've interacted with or the men I've interacted with think X, Y, Z. Well, then it's never going to change. It's a generational change, and it's slow and it sucks and it's hard, right, but it's completely possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And women can understand that it's okay for you to be a strong, like on that patriot, because it's like some of the way that this shit is paid, being in a very male dominated industry. Right. And I know you were in the military, so I know you can appreciate this too.
Yeah. No, I get
women
that.
will hit themselves in the kneecap oftentimes to feel attractive to men. Right. They'll play that dumb card or whatever. Yes. But, women understand that you don't have to do that to attract a man that's, and you can be strong.
Okay, here's a question. Who perpetuates the gun bunny culture?
So that's, oh my God.
It came from men, and women want to please men, and it's what they've observed. And I'm not saying that men are to blame necessarily, but women get these views based on our society saying you need to please men. Right. And when the history has always been men like this, men like X, Y, Z, right, women do that. And then women end up perpetuating that culture that we actually don't like.
Yeah. So do any of you drink Bang Energy?
No.
Okay. Bang Energy is shit, but it tastes good sometimes.
It's shit, but it tastes good sometimes. And you wonder why women get frustrated with men communicating. It's shit.
Literally.
Sometimes.
I mean, it's
so
better.
It's fine.
It's eh. It's eh.
Is that the same as dinner? It's man, it'll make a turd. Is that it'll make some piss? Is that fine?
If it's there and you're thirsty and you need energy, you take the Bang. But anyway, Bang, Bang is known for being on social media with all the women in the real tight athletic clothing, dancing and everything. And I had somebody, I will send you some clips. I had a male friend of mine say, I don't like Bang. Bang is a sexist organization. Bang is a sexist business because they use extremely attractive women and try and hawk their products. And I'm like, is that sexist? And he's like, yeah, because men only want to buy Bang because they think that women like Bang. And I'm like, I think that's kind of a juvenile thought. And in terms of it being sexist, no one made those women take that job. So if they want to take that job.
Okay. I wouldn't say that men buy Bang because they think that women like Bang. They
buy Bang because it's meh.
Because the advertisement that gets their attention has to do with women and skimpy clothing, and so the only time they'll pay attention is when it's something that grabs their attention. Women might not agree with that type of marketing. They take that job because when you're a woman trying to make a career for herself in that industry, you take what the hell you can get, and inside you think, God, wouldn't it be wonderful if this wasn't what was always expected of me? Wouldn't it be great if someone hired me because I was a great actress? Or wouldn't it be great if someone hired me because I fit the role and the role didn't have to do with how big my tits were or how curvy I was? And there's not entirely something wrong with sex selling, but at the same time, it does perpetuate that idea that that's the value of a being. And I'm not saying that
but if you get a job as a Bang Energy backup dancer, I don't think you're going to get taken seriously as much for the finance department. If you wanted finance, go to finance.
I think the issue isn't that. The issue is that it's the reality of the industry is either I have to sell out into the idea that I have to sell my body and my sexuality in order to make a buck, or I stand and protest. I don't get any deals and I don't get any foothold into the acting industry. And that's what women have an issue with, is it's okay, so in order to get ahead, I have to sit on the casting couch. In order to get ahead, I have to feed into this thing. And it's not that women aren't going to do it because they're going to do whatever it takes to get their dreams ahead. Their issue is that, why did it take that to get my dreams where it's at? Whether a man didn't have to do the same things that I did. He didn't have to pimp himself out.
I agree. And one of the things about back to like gun bunnies specifically, gun bunny, right? Gun bunnies, whatever.
Yeah.
Do your thing, girls. Make your money. Like strippers, any of that stuff. Like I'm all about
sex
that.
work is great.
Any of that, but don't pretend it's something it's not. Like if it's because you enjoy it, or because you love to show off your body, or because you whatever, I'm cool with that. Like I have no problem with women doing that and embracing that. And if that's the way they in particular feel empowered, I don't think that it's anybody's business to make that decision for a woman or a man. That being said, in my industry in particular with the gun bunny thing is you get a lot of them that, sit there and they act like they're shooters and this and that. And I'm like, don't pretend to be something you're not, right? Just own it, right? Just cool. You want to make your money that way? Cool. You want free guns that way? That's fine. But you're not a competition shooter. You're not a, this or that. And like, don't try to get marketing. I mean, this conversation comes up a lot because I do a lot of advocacy. I do a lot of education. I do a lot of constitution.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the Hooters argument, though. It's like Hooters exploits women. And I actually talk about this in my book, my first book. There's a chapter called The Economics of Hooters. And it's like, just call a spade a spade. Men go there because they could get wings anywhere, but they want to be treated nicely and served by hot women. Like, and that's just how it is. I don't have a problem with that.
If the woman makes that, if that's, I know a lot of women with a lot of great self-confidence that put themselves through college doing it, and cool, right? Cool, good for them. But don't pretend it's something it's not, right? Don't pretend like it's.
I think the internal dilemma comes from. So when I was 18, I got back from my basic training at EIT, and I had 2 job offers. I had one working at Hooters. I'm not making this up. One working at Hooters, and one at a law firm. Technically the law firm made more money, but like in tips and considering what I looked like and my charisma, I would have made twice as much at Hooters. I had to make the decision, and yes, it was a personal choice, to do what would further my career long term, to do what would be good for me. But I think the issue comes in with, it's not that women and there are people who do have an issue with Hooters as a concept. I don't think the major issue has to do with Hooters as a concept. It has to do with the fact that when it comes down to it, what's going to make me more money? Objectifying my body or following my career goals? And sometimes it's the reality of the situation. And it's not that you're trying to change the economic perception of it, but the reason economics work that way is because of society's view on it. Society drives economic persuasion. So those places make more money because men are more attracted, whatever.
I think women people want it to be one-sided, and because it's not one-sided, it's complicated.
It would be nice if I could make maybe not as much, but close to as much using my brain as I do using my body. And that doesn't have to do with companies. It has to do with changing the perception of society and making men, changing that perception so that men will value the mind of a woman over her body.
So I have a quick follow-up question to that. Do you get mad more at the man who creates those positions and hires those women to do that, or the women that take the job knowing what they're doing because they think it'll help them get ahead? Who do you get more mad at?
I don't think there's an issue with either. I think there's an issue with the fact that a lot of men who do that and do the hiring have been shown to be predatory and inappropriate.
Okay.
It's not about hiring for that position. It's the fact that once they hire for the position, they're inappropriate.
Looking at you,
there are
Cuomo.
A lot of men.
You old people murderer.
But it's like there are men who do that position specifically because they want to be around women who look like that, and they exploit them, and they exploit their financial needs, and they're predatory, and they're disgusting, and they're unprofessional. And I know my cousin worked at Hooters, and I don't know, I can't speak for her, but I think she had a really positive experience. She had a great boss who was just a boss like any other job. But there's plenty of men who go into Hooters and they're a manager and they do whatever, and it's because they're predatory and they're gross and they want to manipulate women who need to make money. And that's what women have an issue with.
I think that in terms of beauty, you know, like the stereotype of the beautiful woman, not necessarily being the smart woman or being able to advance herself, I have to give credit where it's due. And Kayleigh McEnany, I think, is a great example of crushing that. You know, I mean, she just, you know, when she was the press secretary, and I'm no Trump fan, but I'm a McEnany fan. She's a little conservative for my taste. Okay, a lot conservative for my taste. That being said, she's beautiful, she's intelligent, and she was able to advance herself with it, you know, with her brain, and she was savage as hell. And yet there was still a huge contingency of people that reduced her to just her looks. And you know, diminished her intelligence simply because of her looks. So there is that cultural thing there. But I think if anybody that helped to kind of put a fracture in that perception, it's been, I mean, not that there hasn't been many other women. Let me be clear. She's just the first one that I think about when that comes to mind, because she was savage. She's savage, man. And she's smart. And she never had to do it, not that we know of. And I would say, I just don't see it. Like, I don't think it would come forward. Like, we would hear about it by now because of who she was affiliated with. I just don't think that, you know, that she was even still given the credit that she was due for her intelligence and her capabilities, because she was diminished. Ironically diminished mostly by the feminazi contingency, kind of like the Amy Coney Barrett thing, right? Like, all of a sudden, you know, she can't be a judge because she's a mom, right? And so women sometimes can be their own worst enemy with this stuff. Like, they want to talk about bringing women up.
I mean, I'm an example. I'm 23. Through my social media, I mean, just the way that I look and the way that my body is, I've been hypersexualized. Which is why
so many guys I know get in trouble when they swipe on your feed and your girlfriends walk by.
Exactly.
And they're like, I just want her hot takes. The photo just came up.
I've been hypersexualized, and my body has been the topic of conversation. I
know exactly how that feels.
And
it's because of the goatee.
Exactly.
But the fact of the matter is, the position I just got on an executive level is entirely due to my intelligence.
Right.
And I'm sure that there's probably some troll somewhere on my Twitter right now who believes that I slept with someone in order to get where I'm at. And that's just not the truth of the matter. I absolutely worked for it. I used my brain. I've never used my body in any professional capacity in any way at all. In fact, I actually wear vintage style clothing to work, like what I'm wearing right now. I dress very modestly at work. On the weekends, I don't, because I don't have to. But I believe that there are misogynistic assholes out there who would genuinely believe that looking at my social media, oh, she definitely did certain things to get ahead. And like, you know, I'm more moderate in my views, a bit libertarian, but more moderate in my views. And a term that is not really accepted by the right is microaggressions. Because they believe it as something overly sensitive. But like, a microaggression is saying like, oh, we all know what she did to get there.
Yep.
Like, that's
is that the same as passive aggressiveness?
Yeah, but
because I feel like people apply it differently.
A little bit.
But microaggressions aren't just about being passive aggressive. A microaggression has more to do with a certain group of people. And so like saying, oh, okay, we all know. So saying we all know how she got there. Now, if you're in the room when that's said, you understand the undertones that it's said under.
Right.
Everyone knows what you're saying. But if I were to independently go to HR or go to someone else or even go to Twitter and say, hey, they said we all know how she got there. There's someone else out there who can, you know, argue semantics and say, yeah, because of your brains and your intelligence and whatever. The reason it's a microaggression is because when you try to isolate it and you try to explain it to someone, it doesn't seem like it's an issue. And then people try to come up with reasons to excuse it. The reason it's a microaggression is because in that scenario and in that context, everyone knows that it's a disparaging comment. Everyone knows that it's disparaging based on the group that you're a part of, the fact that I'm a woman or the fact that I'm an attractive woman. And that's what makes it a problem. And I think that communicative issue is what's kind of kept the left and the right or the moderate away from each other and understanding this point of view. But like, that's something that I've dealt with a lot is like, oh, we all know how she got here. You know,
so the only thing that I can say, and all the other questions were about dick measuring, so I kind of threw those out. But like one thing that I have definitely seen.
I'm kind of curious. I want to know.
One of the questions was women think that men measure their dicks with each other.
With each other, like as a group.
I don't think so.
I just read it as it is. I don't think anyone thinks that.
I think that young men will definitely teabag each other if they get drunk and pass out at a party. I've seen that actually happen. I've seen that happen, but I don't think that. But when that microaggression, you're talking about passive aggressivity is tended to be used to actually get an action out of somebody based on a manipulative intention of passive aggressive, whereas microaggression is different. And I agree with you. And it's a huge thing. Like I talk about this a lot, like, and Remso and I've talked about this quite a bit with like me, when I refer to myself as a real feminist versus a feminazi. And it's ironic. Like you said, the right doesn't accept a lot of things. And I'm like, you guys are literally like back to the AC, like she was a great example. In fact, I had a moment with that, with my conservative, my friends for the most part, because I wouldn't necessarily call them friends or associates, I should say, when, that came up, because they're like appalled that she was being treated like shit because she wore a dress that they didn't like and she was a mother. And I'm like, you guys, like, this is why feminism is still a thing, right? We're not fighting for rights, but we're still fighting against lacking opportunity and discrimination, yet ironically is created by you conservatives by not understanding, because you become so obsessed with these terms like microaggression or feminism or whatever that has been hijacked by this dominant voice that you've dropped the things that are important and you've let them railroad you through trying to just be ladylike or whatever. And then of course I'm the right. And I always get that, like, Kerry, right, in the gun industry, if you were just a little bit more subtle, like if you weren't so aggressive, you might get weren't so because I'm pretty mouthy, but if you weren't,
you'd be invited on the show more often.
I get that. I've actually been told that you might have more opportunities. And I've literally looked at some of these conservative women and said, I've got receipts too on a couple of big YouTuber women that tried to say that shit, trying to be like, lecture me like they're my mothers. And I'm like, I'm going to do what I do and I don't need you. Right. And then they blocked me and all this shit. I'm like, bitch, I got the receipts. I ain't stupid. I save everything. I'm like, but you voted for Trump, ladies. Oh, well, that's different. How is that different? Tell me how that's different. So what you're saying is you literally just validated the reason that I still need real feminism, because it's okay for a man to act that way, but it's not okay for a woman to act this way. And look, gentlemen, listen, y'all want to go out there and work for Bang and sell your bodies. I'm cool with that too, but you better get rid of the moves. I'm just saying, right? Like, cause that's the double standard with that side of it, is that it's more socially acceptable for men to not be in shape or have hot bodies and be out there in t-shirts on all this kind of shit. I'm like, you know what? Free the nipple? Cool. I'm cool with that too. Women, you want to run around naked? First of all, I got F cup bra. I'm a 34F. Like, logistically speaking, it just does not behoove me to ever go without a bra. But second, like, look, men, like, I don't want to see your tits either. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to do that shit, you get out there and look hot too. And I know and to be fair because I'm all about equality, I know that men face a lot of issues with their body images because of how men are shamed for being too skinny.
I love it. American Eagle. I think it's American Eagle. If you go to their website, I believe it's American Eagle. A coworker of mine buys all of her swimsuits from their site. And she pulled it up during our lunch hour the other day and was showing me. And the first thing I noticed wasn't the swimsuits. I said, oh man, that's so cool. It was real life bodies. And it doesn't mean that it was someone who was, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but someone who was 400 plus pounds. It was just a genuine normal body, a normal 8 to
average
10
American
size body or 4 to 6. I'm a size 4 in some and 6 in others. But I've also lost 100 pounds. I have loose skin. I have cellulite. I have this. I have that. That's what a real body looks like. And there's almost no bodies out there that are like this perfect, no blemishes.
Those bitches are
no
all
this, no that.
I come from the beauty industry.
Marketing.
They're fucking photoshopped anyway.
One of the things that...
to the fake idea a man might have in his head based on a magazine he saw. You're marketing to your actual fucking customer who's going to buy your swimsuit and wants to know what it might look like on her body type.
Victoria's Secret, a lot of places are doing it now. Target is doing it. Target doesn't even airbrush their stretch marks out in there.
I love that.
I think that's great. Yeah.
One of the things that really did surprise me and this was like my second year in the Army when I was responsible for more people. And, I went to military school. So, I had the people in my guard unit in Alabama, but I had a couple cadets I was in charge of. The one thing that no one really liked to talk about, and this was actually something where I always thought, well, this isn't an issue guys have to deal with. This is like a chick issue. I knew more men with eating disorders than I've ever met women. And I know that women, when you look at surveys, women are more likely to have it. But like on the side,
men don't admit it.
Yeah, on the side of men,
and men
I
don't realize they have it.
Right.
Yeah, and that was one of those things where I'm like, this has to be an outlier case. This is like the one-off thing. No, a lot of men have dealt with
more
that.
men in the military. The military breeds, eating disorders.
I really think that's like the only place where you're going to see it.
No, not anymore. Because let me tell you what they just like took away the PT stick. Like it's not even like. They're enabling unhealthy behaviors now. And
is that in the Navy? Because the Army definitely has.
Yeah, all of it. The entire
Army was always ridiculous.
Meetings, it's all of it. It's
so I always got
like right now. I'm the fittest I've ever been in my life. I'm incredibly thin. I'm a size 4. Like I'm very fit, and I'm like 3 pounds away from my max if I were still in the Army. If I were still in the Army, I'd be fighting every day to make sure that I stay within weight standards to an unhealthy point. Yeah, and even if I could pass, even back when I was in the Army, I dealt with that a lot because I could pass a PT test and I was fit and I had a 2-pack of abs. But according to the Army, I was overweight, and it caused me to have binge eating disorder because I would starve myself and put myself through ridiculous things in order to pass weight standards.
Do women get taped?
I know a lot of women who still deal with that. Yeah, but taping on women is not the same as taping on men in the military. Number 1, taping does not show you BMI. But number 2, men are taped at their neck and their waist or their hips. Women are.
It's like just above the nape. It's like just above the belly button.
Yeah, but the fact that
they've suspended that for the past year.
I had a thin neck and a thin waist, but I had really big, like 41-inch hips. Back then, my hips aren't as big as they were then because, well, things change. But I had big hips and a big backside, but I had a tiny waist with a 2-pack of abs and a tiny neck because I was thin, and I would never tape out. And if I didn't fit within that specific pound weight standard, I wouldn't pass tape.
When did you come out?
I entered 2014. I got out 2017.
Girl, I'm telling you that if I'm going to send you, I'll have to have my husband dig up the stuff that's happened in the past 2 years alone. You'll just be like, you've got to be kidding me. Like they've suspended, especially last year.
And now who have still had a lot of negative experiences with the body composition program.
I'm wondering how much of that is command too.
Well, like the new ACFT that they're using to get rid of the regular APFT, where you've got you have to do a deadlift, then you have to do a jump and everything. I got out before I had to ever take that, but you've got to do like the fireman carry. You got to do all this other stuff.
Not anymore.
Yeah, they suspended it. And
they're doing it right now. No, they're still doing it. They're still doing the ACFT. No, they are. They're definitely pushing it hard. I'm mutuals with the TRADOC commander and a few other people in the military who are high up who are pushing the ACFT. It's not implemented in the sense that it's not a standard of being retained, but it's being pushed right now they've tested it, but now they're in the actual implementation testing phase. And tell me if I'm wrong, but from what I've gathered, they're still pushing it. And there's a lot of pushback for a dozen genuine reasons. But no, it's definitely not gone away. Body comp standards are still there. people are still struggling both on men and women's sides to stay within standards. And the military is just going through a lot right now. And honestly, the Air Force has been the best leading force out of all of them to show like comprehensive and intelligent change.
They actually had like nutritionists. They actually had like nutritionists go to DOD and actual like people who had degrees in like kinesthesiology and everything. Because one of the big problems that I was hearing from the ACFT was that a lot of people are getting injured. Like,
yes,
you've never had
and
this
it's
before.
Like, okay, this is supposed to be a training metric, but now you're injuring people through a ridiculous like composite test of standards. Yes, I might have to drag a body X amount of ways. Yes, I might have to do this. But is all of that going to happen in succession in a 30-minute to 1 hour period? No. Like the human body's, there's just it's being tested for a reason. There's so much that needs to change. And I'm by no means an expert, but I do take up issue with those who have issue with those who have issue, because the issues people are having is the exact reason why it's being tested, to get that feedback so that they can understand the issues people are having, why they have those feelings. Outside scientists who are observing and saying, or kinesiologists and nutritionists saying, maybe let's rethink this here and there. And the upper enlisted and upper officers in command that I've seen, especially on social media, are very welcoming to that feedback. And then there's those who haven't been either, or like, Vietnam vets who are like, have an issue with people voicing their opinions, but those in actual military leadership are like, no, that's exactly what we want.
I just text my husband because this conversation literally just came up about 48 hours ago with some standards, because he, being an XO, right, he does the DOD meeting, right, the whole to do with DC and all this shit. And sometimes I'm in the room, sometimes I'm not, depending on class, whatever, right, because he's working from home. But there was something that they just changed, some major component of that they just changed. So I'm waiting for the answer to give you what that is, because I don't remember what it was. But he was like, they just got rid of the fucking and I can't remember what it was. But I was like, so basically they can allow unhealthy, whatever it was to be more inclusive, because like the inclusivity extremism has happened, particularly in the past couple of years. But now, like right now with Biden coming in, there's like that whole, like it's like everything has been wiped out and it's like reset. Yeah. It's kind of a mess. Hold on, let me see.
All I've heard lately is that they've changed like hair standards, which I don't think matters at all. I mean, you just look at the Israeli women fighting and being absolute badasses. Who gives a shit if your hair is in a ponytail? Well, if you're getting the job done, that's all that matters.
One of the things that launched the whole Tucker thing, not to get into that, was like women's maternity combat fatigues, and like people forget that was approved on two things. Like that was one that was approved under Trump. Two, the civilians also didn't know what the previous standard was. I don't know how it was active duty, but like in the reserves, if you were a pregnant woman and you just came in civilian attire. Now that just made sense, but it was also to the point where it's like, it'd probably just be better if we just made some accommodations so at least she's in uniform.
Yeah. But that's the thing is civilians wanted to give their opinions on it, and they were like, maternity combat uniform? Why would we have pregnant women in active combat? That's why no offense, but also offense, your opinion doesn't matter on this, because you don't actually know what you're talking about. Pregnant women are not in combat, but pregnant women still need to do their jobs. If that means working on an aircraft or working in the motor pool up to a certain point in your gestational period, then that's what you do. But based on all these people in the military, we're uniform. We all have to look the same. Wear the same uniform. Okay, well, if I'm 6 months pregnant and I'm still expected to work on the flight deck, then I need a flight suit that fits my pregnant body.
Well, somebody tried saying that. Yeah, somebody tried saying it was some other conservative commentary. They're like, "What? Do you want a pregnant woman up in an F-16?" It's like they're not allowed to. Do you know how many health evaluations both men and female pilots have to go through? If you're pregnant after a certain point, you're not allowed up there.
Well, and there was a whole, right? mean, if you really want to, right, and I know being in kind of the field that you're in, Myah, like psychologically speaking, right, there was reason why women, like there's been countless studies done about women being on frontline combat, and especially if they're pregnant, they may, like if it's right, because some of these people will send out their kids with bombs strapped to them, and they may, right, they became a liability issue. And I'm not supporting, condoning, whatever. I don't know enough about it, but I do remember reading a bunch of those psychological studies showing like the whole controversy about women in active duty and stuff. They never put them there anyway because of, or not active duty, but frontline combat, right? Because of some of these inherent like mama bear instinct things with kids and how they.
I mean, there might have been psychological studies about that, but my understanding is that it had a lot less. So much less to do with the psychological aspect and just the physical aspect of the fact that women are perfectly capable of making combat decisions and in the moment decisions. We're perfectly capable of being as lethal as men and as capable as men. But when you're pregnant, it doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man. It doesn't matter how well you act under pressure. There's still stress put on your body when you're making those decisions. And you can, I'm a person who is incredibly calm under pressure. That only means that I'm able to internalize the stress. We all feel the stress. I'm able to internalize it and act outwardly in a calm manner, but we all feel it. And when you're pregnant, it's not good for your baby to go through that stress. So it doesn't matter if as a woman you're able to withstand that stress and act in a calculated and reasonable manner. It doesn't make you less lethal. It's just about protecting your child and giving you the rights and safeties that you deserve. And it has nothing to do with women's capability 6 months to 9 months pregnant, and just about giving you the space and comfortability of carrying safely to full term and still being able to do your job when that term is over.
So, like, here was the really uncomfortable thing for me. And I came in a year before you did, I was in 2013. Mm-hmm. And that was when the conversation of women in frontline active roles came out. Right. And, you know, you tell people you were in the Army as a man, and what they would try and do and try and get you in a gotcha question is, it used to be prior to that, it's like, oh, how do you feel about gays in the Army? Then it came to, well, how do you feel about women in the front lines? And it was always one of those things where it's like, that's kind of a stupid question because women were always there. What they were fighting for wasn't necessarily access to the battlefield. What they were fighting for was certain MOSs and stuff. And like, you know, if you were a medic, you were on the front line. If you were an MP, like, you know, people forget Tulsi Gabbard, front line. She was an MP in Baghdad and a combat medic officer. What the issue was, and this is what a majority of women within the military, when surveyed between 2013 and 2015, said, was that they didn't want to necessarily have to branch infantry MOS, because if you and your squad are going on like a 2-week patrol and you got to set up a fob somewhere, is that the best place for a woman to be? And even women were like, no, that's not the best environment for them to be.
You know, that was
I don't know. I don't know. I have very, very, very close best friends who are some of the first women in combat arms, and not only in combat arms, but as officers in combat arms and leadership.
But were they infantry?
No, but close to it. I mean, armor. They're still, you know, on the front lines, and they're still. I have a female friend.
Armor and field. Yeah, I mean, armor and field artillery. They're going to be out there, but like it came down to the question: are you going to want to be in a fob with 12 men?
If a woman doesn't want to be in combat, then the fact of the matter is now that we're allowing women in combat more, women get to choose, and that's what it's all about: is women getting to choose. As a woman deciding, no, I do want to be in combat. I do think that's my place. I do think I'm capable, and not only do I think I'm capable, have that choice too. I'm going to prove that I'm capable.
A woman shouldn't be given the choice, and a man not, and be forced. I have a female.
But when I enlisted, women weren't allowed in combat roles.
Out there directing, she's amazing. So the Hub sent me this, and interesting enough, on that side note with the pregnancy thing, I'm curious because, like I said, I'm only hearing about this. I've not paid attention. I've been doing a lot of other crap, and so I'm not.
You didn't miss much on Twitter.
Huh?
You didn't miss much on Twitter.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. But I know that it's a big drama, blah, 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 whatever. But
it'll be gone by Monday.
But I know that one, and this is just a side note to the pregnancy thing. with all that is I know that one of the big frustrations with military, talking about somebody who's in a command position, were the women who will intentionally get pregnant to keep from deploying. And I know that did happen.
I've seen that.
Yeah, and it did happen. So I'm wondering how much of that, like, if you were to get into the layers of all of this crap, right? Like, what was really said?
Honestly, I think that the percentage of women who intentionally get pregnant to avoid deployment are about the same as the women who lie about assault, which is a very, very small percentage. And yes, people will have anecdotal experience with it of, yeah, I know a woman who blah, 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 blah. But I don't think that it's an overwhelming percentage of,
I think
getting
that
out of a 9-month deployment with an 18-year commitment. That's a very small percentage.
I think that might be also based Army versus Navy. My husband had a lot of it. Like it was actually an issue. It became an issue.
I mean, Navy you're out to sea way more often. Within the Army, you're not allowed to deploy except for maybe every 2 years.
Yeah, and my husband was out. Most of our 10-year marriage, he was either stationed overseas or was on a ship. And I
knew a sailor who intentionally got himself into a car wreck to avoid going back out to sea.
Yeah, I mean,
but see, that's the thing is, it's like people. It has less to do with the gender of the person and more about the fact of the matter that you're willing to do whatever you can to get out of deployment. I don't think that it's a. It
just happened to be that
issue.
Women getting pregnant was an easier way to do it. You know what? People like.
I don't know. I mean, I spent with my ex. I spent 2 years trying to get pregnant and I couldn't. So is it easier to get pregnant or is it easier to throw yourself down a flight of stairs?
Well, I guess
if you jump in front of a car, in some cases, that's free college. But ladies, we've gone. Yeah, go ahead.
One of the issues that they were having with the ships out here, right? Because he does this like Hawaii, San Diego, like a whole, Pacific fleet, right?
Yeah. They
were having issues with guys intentionally getting COVID because they thought it would keep them from not deploying. So they actually had to restructure the ships. So they were like, no, we're done with this. So what they did is they created a quarantine area on the ships and be like, nah, guess what? Get on the boat. You're going. And now you're quarantined on the boat in, probably the dregs of the bilge or whatever, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
So this was, he sent me this and this was what I was talking about. They changed, they changed planks. They're doing planks instead of sit-ups for something with strength. That's what I was thinking of. But he said what's happening now is that the Army, and this is something you guys will be, the genderless physical readiness tests, they went to genderless, they tried attempting genderless tests, and the women were having a 65% failure rate because they couldn't meet the standards because they made them all, so instead of like bringing them both to the middle, the standards, they made it this standard, and the women had to come up to the standard in this genderless testing, and it was in the Army and Marines. This is what he was just telling me. So the Army attempted
that whole thing is
well, but the issue with that is that they'll, when it comes to, let's have genderless standards, they'll bring women up to the men's standards, but they won't bring men down to the women's weight standards.
But that's
one of those things where it's like that they think that solves the problem, but that actually just makes it worse for everybody.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. He said there was there is like, because it's just now they're evaluating that 65% failure rate for females because they weren't able to meet that criteria. So we'll see what happens with all that. Obviously, I think they'll change it again. But the military itself, like a bunch of the stuff, like my husband right now is having to do this whole, and he's pissed. I mean, just this whole extremism training now. He has to do this whole, right? He has to do that. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he says, basically, it's the more restricted, if you see something, say something. Like, so literally now you've got, people that are joining the military that may be, more liberal leaning or whatever. Because yes, spoiler alert, conservatives, it does happen. There are Democrats in the military, contrary to and libertarian. It's not just, America, God-loving Republicans in the military. But but all it takes is one who's there with some pissed off at somebody, right? And now, this is the mess my husband is dealing with.
I mean,
it's extremism.
I get that, but yeah. I think that there's been, even in my time in the military, is very obvious white supremacists, very obvious racists, very obvious people of extremist belief, whether it was left or right, who were given a pass and ignored, and it just got passed on by.
Sure.
And now you're in a position where you're fighting overseas, and you're given a weapon, and you're given a type of authority that comes with representing the government. And I mean, I understand that to some it might feel like the extremism training is a bit
it is, and here's why.
Scrupulous,
so let me finish.
But at the same time,
why.
It's a good idea to look through our military ranks and figure out if people are actually representing our government, because our government does not support racist beliefs, extremist beliefs. And if you're supposed to be representing our government and
it's creating this new thing that he's supposed to be training people now allows for false accusations against people simply because they may be a Trump supporter. I'm totally paraphrasing. Let me finish. I'm totally paraphrasing this. I'm totally paraphrasing it.
I was a paralegal in the military, so my job was military justice. And even if you make an accusation, there's a whole investigative process.
I'm well aware of that. My husband hires you guys and investigate those investigations. But that's what I'm saying is this new thing that he literally had to put into implementation for his entire base last week. He says this can open up the door for some very dangerous shit.
So this would be great for another episode, but I just realized we've gone 45 minutes over time. I've had a blast tonight. This was awesome.
It's been a good conversation. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you. To wrap things up, Kerry, we'll start with you, and then we'll wrap it up with Myah. You know, we talked about a lot of assumptions, a lot of stereotypes, a lot of things. I learned a lot. Hopefully, somebody did listening to this. But are there any last thoughts before we go, Kerry?
Just that, Myah and I both, we sat here and we both were literally saying the same thing, right? I mean, and at some point, it's one thing that when you get an individual that isolates a conversation, right? And in your relationship, right? Your interpersonal relationship with your spouse, boyfriend, significant other, girlfriend, whatever, right? And it's easy to think, okay, that this is independent, but you have two women here from different worlds, both echoing literally the exact same sentiment.
Yeah.
So maybe, it's one of those moments where like Remso, I thought it was awesome. You're like, I got to sit back and process this a minute. Right. But when you came into that conversation, you're like, when you're like being on the toilet, I just want to solve that problem. Right. But then afterward, you're like, whoa. Right.
I chose the worst example. I'm never going to not hear that again.
No, but you get my point is overall is that you took a moment to be like, okay, this is something this is a thing, right? And I bet you if you asked 20 other women, they'd probably say this or close to it, right? The same thing. And maybe it's just that we have a similar background experience or life experiences or whatever. But it's one of those things where that that stereotype of the Mars Venus, there is definitely communication differences, the way men and women communicate, because, guess what? There are differences between us. But that doesn't mean that you should be victimized by it. And that goes both ways. Absolutely goes both ways.
I would say as men, oftentimes I think that men avoid conflict because they think that in the long term it'll work out. But if you look back, maybe younger men don't have this perception, or perspective, I should say, but older men maybe. Taking that little extra time to talk about your feelings will save you from a lot of long-term heartache or struggle or conflict even. And just letting it out will reduce that feeling of resentment and honestly save a lot of relationships. I think if you ask any marriage counselor, or even any married or divorced person who's been through marriage counseling, what was the root of your problems? It always comes back to communication.
Always.
And it doesn't matter what it is or what the communication was about. It always comes back to communication. And the root of that is just genuinely talking about how you feel or your thought on something that's going on, whether it's something small on who took the trash out or something big about a boundary that was crossed. If men will just take that extra moment of uncomfortability and addressing an issue, you're going to save so much future conflict and future issues that it will be worth it. every single time.
Awesome. Kerry, if people want to follow you and everything you do online, how could they do so?
Still Out as the Shotguns pretty much everywhere. My nonprofit organization that works with helping to educate women, self-defense, We the Female. You can find me everywhere on We the Female too. On Twitter, you can find me Still As the Shotguns or The Real SNS.
Outstanding. Myah, you've got books out and everything else. How can people find everything?
I do. On Twitter, you can follow me at Chaotic Goodest. Sorry.
We've all been drinking. It's all right.
I know.
Not me.
ChaoticGoodest, Chaotic Goodest on Twitter, on Instagram. Myah. Yes, that's me. Myah _Master.
That's
Instagram.
right. You can't see this.
Yes, if you Google me, Myah Master, you'll find my Amazon page where you can buy my books. I have my 3rd coming out probably in the next month, and my 4th and 5th to follow soon. So thank you so much for all y'all's support, and thank you, Remso, for having me on.
Not a problem, ladies. It's been an absolute pleasure. But folks, please, it costs you nothing, but it means everything to me. A 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to shows like this across Al Gore's amazing internet. Lets people know what you like about the show, what we're doing here, and helps us keep conversations like this alive. As always, follow me across all the internet, all that stuff. Hey, Remso, HEYRAMSO, and I'll talk to you later in the week. I'm Remso W. Martinez. Be safe, be good. I'll talk to you later.
You're listening to the We Are Libertarians podcast network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com, like The Chris Spangle Show, Liberty Explained, The Brian Nichols Show, The Boss Hog of Liberty, Freedom Strips with Keaton Tucker, On the Run with Remso Martinez, Gingerarchy with Tricia Stewart-Mann, Upward, Libertarian Activism, and Now Hear This. Tune in now and we're going to help you sound smarter when talking with your friends.